1. I work in IT, and my first job was a Tier 1 tech support agent for a call center. Our company had contracts with a lot of smaller ISPs, and we would take a high volume of calls for various types of issues, depending on who called in. For me, 40 calls in a day was pretty normal. Unlike most people who were just reading a script and collecting a check, I always had a vested interest in technology, and also held some IT certifications which were not the norm here. I was really good at solving technical problems for customers and worked really hard. After working there for a few months, management decided they wanted to start micromanaging the heck out of people, and made up tons of strict metrics that they thought sounded good but were not backed up by actual data to implement. One of their metrics is they wanted people to target a 12-minute call time with the customer, and anything over 20 minutes was really bad. That sounds reasonable, but they did not account for people who were really good at their job and resolved a lot of issues. My call times would fluctuate between 6 and 7 minutes, because again I was skilled at problem solving in this area, and I resolved all customer issues I found. It turns out that people who had under 9-minute call times would lose points on their rating because it was so much under the average. So my scores in the spreadsheet were failing because I was too fast. My supervisor was scored on his agent's performances, so his score was also really bad due to the fact that I was good at my job and scoring a 0 every week for average handle time. The contracts we had with these companies we supported paid out to our local company based on things like tickets created, issues resolved, number of calls, etc. So I was essentially making the company 2 to 3 times as much as a slow agent per night I clocked into work. However, because of our amazing performance rating system, my ability to do my job well was hurting both my score and my supervisor's score and getting both of us in trouble. They had a team of a couple leads listen to all my calls to figure out what I was cheating on, or not doing that was in the process for our clients to make my call time so short. But I had everything I was supposed to in all of my tickets and was resolving issues, so they found nothing. When we had our weekly one-on-one meeting after this had been going on for a couple weeks, my supervisor specifically told me that he wanted me to do a worse job from this point forward because it would help both of us. He wanted me to add in random small talk, resolve things slower, and type up my tickets slower. At first I was in disbelief and attempted to argue this, but then I was like, okay, if that's what you really want, I can do it. So that night I talked to random customers about Destiny 2 and other nonsense, and made the company less money, because that's exactly what they wanted. And what do you know? I never got in trouble for call times again. 2. I worked in the London office of a large, respected, and well-known international but US-based organization, who like to profess and pretend they were a caring, sharing, benign, and PC employer, who truly cared about members of the corporate family, and only had our best interests at heart while they shafted us. The usual years of pay freezes for us pros, job vacancies unfilled, doubling our workload, essential equipment left obsolete, etc., etc., while the bosses gave themselves increasingly huge bonuses, fancy titles, and perks. They were particularly proud of their Corporate Employee Service Recognition Awards scheme, which had its own dedicated catalog and laterally website, where on achieving so many years of serfdom, a choice from a new cornucopia of appreciative gifts would be lavished upon you, with due ceremony along with a poorly mimeographed certificate of service. I failed to keep a hard copy, which I regret, but certain items we could select remained seared in my memory. 15 years of service could be rewarded with a ring containing a 0.01 carat black diamond, aka coal. Another option at 25 years would be an orange cast iron skillet. You get the picture. Another way was something only available to our US colleagues for whom there was no mandatory retirement. 60 years service could earn you the ultimate, a cheap Chinese-made 16-speed racing bicycle. Given that at an absolute minimum you'd have to be 76 to get this. The black joke was that you were encouraged to ride it in heavy traffic, in order to rid the company of their pension obligations. Which brings me to our little collective attempt at malicious compliance. It took the company several years to cotton on, But when a home gymnasium setup strangely became available as a 25-year service award, it immediately became the go-to choice of all my worldwide colleagues. Why? Not for any desire for fitness, but because all these things had to be sourced and shipped from the States. Shipping for a crappy but hugely bulky and heavy weight frame, dumbbells, and all the weights to Sydney, Delhi, Ulaanbaatar, or wherever, probably cost the company at the very least 20 times the value of the item. Not to mention the customs duties and import fees. I think this went on for about 5 years before the bean counters clocked it. Myself, I missed out, and had to settle for the orange frying pan to remind me how much they valued my 25 years of servitude. It's mounted on the wall for my grandchildren to revere. To those of you who have received long service awards that actually do make you feel appreciated, I'm delighted for you. For the rest of us, I think we're all pretty much agreed that these derisory awards are really just an insult, rubbing in just how little we are valued. Better nothing than a piece of worthless crap. It's not a matter of financial value. A simple, heartfelt, personalized letter from almost anyone further up the food chain, honestly recognizing my service and efforts, would have meant immeasurably more than any trinket. It's a strange thing that high executives and CEOs apparently need huge bonuses and stock options to incentivize them to work well. But different rules apply to us peons. Obviously, giving me even a real Le Creuset pan would have been a waste, as I'd have undoubtedly sold it immediately to score meth and hookers like what us peasants does. 3. I suppose firstly I should start by telling you how I met my girlfriend and what she came to mean to me. I first met Sarah at a yoga class in the summer of 2016. Never in my life did I think I would see myself going to something like that. The silly spandex, the holier-than-thou attitude, the way everyone talked to each other like they were fucking high. It's not something I ever imagined myself doing, but when I hurt my back after falling from a first-floor roof at work, I decided to give it a shot on the recommendation of my back masseuse, and found a hall in my city doing beginner yoga classes. When the day to go came and I walked through the door, I instantly stuck out like a sore thumb. Everyone was standing around, talking, dressed to the nines in their best yoga gear, while I sauntered in wearing bog-standard shorts and a t-shirt, looking like someone from a cowboy flick walking onto a sci-fi movie set. I immediately wanted to turn and leave, of course, but the woman doing the class saw the look of pure terror in my eyes and came up to me and said hello. I told her why I was there, and that I didn't feel very comfortable, but she insisted that I should give it a try. She thought it would help my back problems, and if not, well, no harm, no foul. I felt better at that point, and thought, fuck it, might as well try and get my money's worth, even if I do end up looking like a diseased pretzel. It was then that I looked across the room and saw the same look of terror that I had no doubt been portraying. That was Sarah. She had not long found she had scoliosis after years of being misdiagnosed, and was told that it was all in her head, among other things. She was there with her mother, who was with her for emotional support and to see how she got on. After seeing her, I instinctively gravitated towards her in the same way that a drowning person gravitates towards a life ring thrown at them. After the yoga instructor had a chat with her, she shouted me over and said that it was Sarah's first time too, so maybe we should sit next to one another and give each other a bit of support. I said that was cool with me, and she also smiled and nodded, so I walked over. We hit it off right away. My emotions went from a bit of embarrassment to serious amusement as we both attempted to fit in with the rest of the class. After the class was over, we were still talking away, and I felt a genuine connection and butterflies in my stomach. And as we said goodbye, we caught each other's gaze, and she smiled at me for a purity that for the first time in my life made me feel weak at the knees. I wouldn't have went back in a million years had I not met her, but I decided to go the next week, and when I walked in the door, I got those butterflies in my stomach again, and was hoping to see her face, but she wasn't there. As I was sitting there, I felt this feeling of pure dread, and was sat thinking, what the fuck am I even doing here? I felt this sadness that was hard to describe. Kinda reminded me of when I went to this holiday caravan park when I was about 12 with my gran and cousins, and there was this big center with pool tables and amusements and all that stuff. I remember seeing this girl there every night for a week, and I instantly fell in love with her. Didn't say a fucking word to her right enough, but psyched myself up that I was going to try to speak to her on the last night at the disco. But when we went down, she wasn't there. I'll never forget that feeling of sadness as we went home. That girl had walked out of my life, and she probably didn't even know she walked into it. I felt that same aching sadness when I didn't see Sarah. I knew nothing about her, had no way of contacting her, and felt this surreal sadness that was hard to quantify. About 4 months later, I was working on a roof repairing a truss damaged in a storm, when we decided to stop for a break. As we made our way back to the van, the house owner came out and asked us if we wanted cups of coffee. We accepted, and she came out with coffee and biscuits. As soon as I seen this woman, I just knew her face from somewhere, but couldn't for the life of me place her. It wasn't until that night, after racking my brains, that I realized it was at that yoga hall I'd seen her before, and it was Sarah's mother. The next day, I was back finishing the job, and the same thing happened. We stopped for a break, went down towards the van, and the woman came out asking if I wanted some coffee. After we finished up, I took the cups and biscuit wrappers back. As I was passing them over to her, I asked how her daughter was, and was she still having back problems. She looked surprised but smiled at me and said yes. Then asked how I knew her. I replied that I spoke to her at a yoga class months back. She laughed and said that she remembered me now. I then gave her a card with my number written on it and asked if she could maybe get her daughter to text me, as I wanted to get back in touch with her. Shot my shot, I thought. Wish I fucking hadn't now. I got a text message that night from Sarah asking how I was, and that she had looked for me again at the yoga hall, but I wasn't there. Turned out she had went back a week after me, as she thought it was bi-weekly. We met up soon after, really hit it off again, and after 8 months, she moved in with me. She was funny, smart, and sweet, as well as being the most uniquely beautiful person I'd ever met. She had a whimsical beauty to her, pointed ears and defined features. She reminded me of a she-elf or something. I truly thought I'd found my soulmate. She had moved into my home and everything was going great guns. She was on disability and got personal independence payments and was getting steroid injections for her scoliosis, along with painkillers and exercises were keeping her pain at bay. We would alternate the cooking while she done the cleaning and took care of our cat Mitzi. I was also making good money, so we were in a comfortable position financially. When I got back from work, we'd always be doing things like going out for walks or the like, just always in each other's company. It was at this point I was seriously contemplating proposing to her. Things changed around Halloween of 2019. Our sex life was always very active, but there were times when she occasionally wasn't up to it, and I was fine with that. We'd work around positions that were comfortable for her due to her back problems, but I'd say in general she had a high sex drive. Well, around October, she started complaining a lot about her back hurting more, especially just before the times we'd usually go to bed together. Anytime we did have sex after that, it wasn't passionate or intense. It felt like we were going through the motions. She started complaining while we were in the middle of it, so at that point I'd stop, of course. I started feeling really sexually frustrated, but I was positive that it was just a blip, and that we'd get through it together. Thing is, she seemed fine in other aspects of her life. She seemed happy. The first real red flag for me came in December when she completely stopped showing me affection. She just became cold towards me. She seemed repulsed when I put my arms around her or tried to take her hand. She was the one who was so touchy-feely, hands and hair, constant reaffirming touches, kisses and cuddles. When we'd sit on the couch, she'd basically be on top of me. That all completely stopped. Didn't for Mitzi, though. Yeah, that's right. I ended up jealous of our cat. At this point, we were in the new year, and I suspected her of cheating. She had become downright hostile towards me. I started trying to up my workload around the house, but nothing was good enough. I ended up constantly being belittled and walking on eggshells. Couldn't do right for wrong and was starting to become a humorless shell of my witty former self. One night I got a hold of her phone and looked through it. Nothing, clean as a whistle. Wasn't even any messages from her friends or her mother, which I found weird. It was then that my friend told me that if we were on the same plan, then I could check the carrier's website and see all the activity from her phone. We were on the same plan, and I paid for her phone. That night, I logged into my BT account, navigated to mobile, then her number, started to sift through it, and there it was. thousands of texts and calls to this one specific number. It had started 6 months previous, and it had dates, times, and how long calls were. She'd be speaking to and texting this person for hours and hours while I was at work, deleting everything before I got home, then going cold turkey when I got back. I googled the number and came up a local garage, one where she had got her car fixed previously. I remembered it taking a while for it to get fixed and her complaining about it a lot. The whole thing was a long, drawn-out affair, in more ways than one, apparently. At this point, I was ice cold. I already had got it into my head she was having an affair, so getting it confirmed was more of a relief than anything else. I wanted to catch her in the act, rather than have her attempt to gaslight me and squirm out of the circumstantial. So I found out everything I could about this guy. I found out where he lived, that he had a young wife and child, found out what car he drove, even walked in asking about prices so I could look this guy in the eye and get a measure of him. His name was Carl, with a K. I knew the affair was physical for lots of reasons, but the fact that their phone calls and texts stopped dead from 1 to 2 each day said to me that was the time they were meeting up. I came up with all sorts of silly plans to loan my friend's car and sit at the end of the street, then wait till she drove out, then follow her to the place she was meeting this guy, and jump out of the car while they were in the act like, "Surprise, motherfucker!" There were too many variables in that, though, and I'm no private detective. One day I decided to drive by his garage about 1:30, and her car was just sitting there, and the place was locked up. So, mystery solved. I was at this point at the end of my tether, and really to just tell her I knew everything and to get the fuck out of my house, when she asked if it would be okay to go away to a spa place for the weekend, alone. She said she was depressed with everything, with her back being so much worse, that this place would be great to help with that, with all the things she could do. That she would come back refreshed and like a new person. She was right about that, because I didn't know who the fuck this was standing in front of me anymore. Obviously, she wasn't going there alone, if she was even going there at all. This would be a dirty weekend away with this guy. I said fine. Now I had a new plan, and this would be the last fucking thing I'd do for her. If you're thinking this is all too much kerfuffle, then you're right, obviously, but my position is I wanted revenge, and I wanted to get her back with some style. I didn't just want to have her cry and gaslight me for days, then leave on her terms, with me, the bad guy. I would be the bad guy, but it would be my terms she'd be leaving on, all right. The Friday came, and the spa was 100 or so miles down the road, so she decided to get a train. I jokingly asked her if she couldn't find something more local. Umming and ohing followed until I told her I was only kidding. I got off work a couple hours early and took her into the train station. Despite her protest, she would get a taxi, as I wanted to see her off. We drive in, and as I'm looking for a place to park, you wouldn't guess whose car I spot. That's right, Carl, with a K. I think, fuck it, I'm gonna have some fun and make her squirm, so I park up directly next to him. They're right next to each other, door to door, and she immediately becomes uneasy, not knowing where to look. I'm pretending to look for something, trying to draw out the moment, and the atmosphere is razor sharp at that point. What happened next genuinely caused me to do something out with my plan. She silently started to giggle. You know when you go to church, or someone dies, and something funny pops in your head? And it becomes mental torture desperately trying to think of something else, and stop yourself from laughing maniacally, while she's desperately trying not to laugh. I'm pretending not to notice. She's tapping her hand on her trouser leg, and from the corner of my eye, I can see him, with his head on the fucking steering wheel. She actually lets out a laugh, then quickly disguises it as a cough, and starts clearing her throat. I start doing the whole tapping the back thing, and I'm just thinking to myself, I can't wait to get you back. See, we all go through life being the butt of the joke at least once, whether it be passive-aggressive work colleagues, or when you get up and try to do a talk at school with a face redder than the devil himself. But you never expect that shit from people who are supposed to have your back, even if you are conspiring against them at that point. I helped her into the train station with her things, made sure she had her bearings, said goodbye and walked away. By the time I got out, Carl with a K's car was nowhere to be seen, so I went back home, composed myself, and carried out my plan. My plan was simple but effective. I started by having a locksmith come out to change the locks. I then proceeded to pack all of her clothes and belongings into bin bags and put it round the side of the house. On Friday night, with the noise of her laughing at me ringing in my ears, I done something I never imagined I could do. I took Mitzi's litter tray, walked round the side of the house with it, opened the bin bag with Sarah's belongings in it and threw it in, gave the bag a good shake, then tied it up again. The way I seen it at the time was that it's cause and effect in action. She caused me to effectively put cat shit in with her things. If you're thinking I'm an asshole, then you're probably right. I'll never win any awards for being nicest neighbor on the block. If I don't like you within 5 minutes of meeting you, I probably never will, and the only time I'd ever take out your trash is if you are the trash. If you do break through those barriers, though, I think I'm a loyal, caring person. I didn't do anything to deserve being cheated on, except maybe putting cat litter in with her things, but that was after the fact. I spent the Saturday in a mire of depression, answering her texts with the only energy I could muster, which wasn't a lot. I complained of a severe headache from a hangover I had never had, and the text dwindled down. The reality of what was transpiring hit home, and for the first time since before New Year I took stock of my life, sitting in my swivel armchair with Mitzi in tow, like a fucking Bond villain. Sunday came, and I was ready to execute the final part of my plan. Firstly, I drove to Carl with a K's house and put a letter through his door. It was addressed to his wife and basically said in block capitals, "Important. Carl with a K's wife, open immediately." Inside it was a letter outlining how her husband was having an affair with my girlfriend, copies of her phone calls and text log, as well as other information like that they were away together this weekend. I put it through the door, rang the doorbell, and walked away. Got in my car and drove for a minute, then parked up again. Then I phoned Sarah. I genuinely can't remember a lot of what I said to her, but it was something along the lines of me asking how everything was going. She started to gush about how much she enjoyed herself, that she feels like a new woman, that she could maybe see herself doing it 2 or 3 times a year, you know, to blow off the cobwebs. Certainly to blow something. At this point I blurt out, "How's Carl?" Her yapping stops dead. Silence fills the air until she finally says, "Who's Carl?" "You know, Carl. With a K." I then proceed to tell her that I knew everything, that I changed the locks and all her stuff was round the side of the house. Instead of being apologetic, she goes on a thunderous diatribe, blaming me for everything, basically stabbing me in the back while complaining that my backbone was blunting her blade. At the end, I told her how her stuff smelled of Mitzi's poo and hung up. I blocked her number and didn't see hide nor hair of her until the Wednesday. When I came back from work, she was sitting on the doorstep. All the bags had been moved. I ignored her, walked around the back, let myself in the back door and locked it behind me. Haven't spoken to her since, although she's made her attempts, including a letter. In regards to Carl, with a K, I don't know what happened between him and his wife. I do know that he said it wasn't personal to a friend of mine. That made me angry, like, is that supposed to make it better? Someone saying something isn't personal just means it isn't personal to them. It was to me. If someone smashes through your front room in a 4x4, obliterating everyone you've ever loved, is it easier to get over it if they didn't personally mean it? Is it easier to pick up the pieces and put them back together again? No. I heard that COVID hasn't been kind to his business, though. But you won't catch me shedding no tears for that. Unless it's tears of laughter, that is. 4. This took place around 5 years ago in a third world country. I started an internship as a kitchen helper for a large hotel chain, and I was scheduled for 6 months of internship in order to get my diploma for a culinary course I was taking. This happened around 5 months into my internship. Dick Boss background. Given the job because of connections with the higher-ups, has no experience running the other areas of the restaurant, only one area. We have the butcher's, baker's, lion, cold kitchen, and the banquet kitchen. Never actually does his job, just passes it down to his secretary. In all my time there, I have never seen him cooking or anything related, not even to help out when we are understaffed and overbooked. So, 5 months into my internship, we heard news that the chef of the kitchen staff quit for unknown reasons. In comes the executive sous chef, Dick Boss. He gathered all of us 4 interns and asked if any one of us is brave enough to handle the staff kitchen. So I, being the only one stupid enough, asked to be considered as a replacement, thinking that if I do a good job I would be absorbed into the company when my internship finishes. He chooses me because I always go on unpaid overtime bouncing around the other areas of the restaurant to learn as much as I can. Even on holidays that interns are not obliged to work, I go in and work 16 to 20-hour shifts, just to help the regular employees and learn. The regular employees already consider me as part of the team and actually cook in the line and not relegated menial tasks like peeling veg, like the other interns. So the next day I start working in the staff kitchen. The work was simple enough. You get 3 hours in the morning to prepare 1 meal for all 150 employees of the hotel by lunchtime, then prep for the next day's meals. The other interns would take care of serving the other employees, and then the steward does the dishes. I get by for 2 weeks cooking 150 meals, rice, veggies, soup, protein, with only 2 home kitchen grade burners and other faulty equipment. No wonder the last guy quit. The floor drains would sometimes flood about 1 to 2 inches of water, the high-pressured wok burner is always out of commission. The fryer sometimes works. Every day I ask for repairs from the executive sous chef, but all I get is, "Deal with it." The day of the malicious compliance. The day started as normal. I finish cooking. Before lunch rush, all food is on the bain-marie. And I clean up the kitchen. Lunch starts at 10 a.m. for the employees because the kitchen staff needs to eat first before service. 10 a.m. rolls around, and still no sign of the interns that would serve the food. So no problem. I serve the employees myself and give a call to the restaurant to send down the interns. A few minutes go by, I get a call from Dick Boss telling me that apparently the interns were busy in the restaurant. So I asked the restaurant staff who were about to eat lunch if they had any big events today, and they say that it is slower than usual. So lunch rush arrives. For the staff, it is in full swing, and still no interns. I run to the back kitchen to refill the rice. As I was in the back, the staff tells me that there are not enough utensils. Usually it is the steward's job to make sure that there are utensils for the staff, so I call the restaurant to send down one of the stewards. And they tell me that they can't because they're down 2 people who recently quit. So my friend from the restaurant sees me struggling a little, finishes eating quickly, and tries to help serve food while I wash dishes. In comes Dick Boss. He sees my friend serving food and me washing dishes. He asks why we are doing such, and I say that the interns and steward are not here. He goes back into the kitchen and looks around and then phones the restaurant to send down the interns to take over. He asks me in the middle of lunch rush to come into the office with him. We sit down and he says he is writing me up for having a disorganized and filthy kitchen. I say that it is not my problem when there are no other staff there to help me. He says something along the lines of, "If you want to be part of this company, you'll have to pull your weight and be a team player under my leadership. If you feel like you can't take my type of leadership, then maybe you should rethink your career choice and not bother showing up tomorrow." So after the write-up, I go back down to the staff kitchen and check my back kitchen to clean up the filth he saw. Everywhere I looked, I don't see anything dirty except by the massive rice cooker. 3 grains of cooked rice. Dick Boss wrote me up for 3 fucking grains of rice. So I finished my shift and went home. The next day, I get a call from Dick Boss on why I was late. My reply was, "I thought about your style of leadership and my career choice, and wound up with that this is not worth $1 an hour." I hang up and turn off my phone, then went back to sleep. After I woke up, there were around 15 missed calls. The aftermath, as told by my friend who was working there when I left. Apparently, he was trying to give my job to his friend's son, and he was trying to make me quit. The already understaffed restaurant staff had to take over my work until his friend's son came in a week later, and promptly quit after 2 days. For 2 months, the restaurant staff had to take turns and work the staff kitchen. Apparently, the staff cook before me was also sick of his shit and quit the same as the stewards who quit after. After I quit, 2 more stewards quit as well, and some restaurant chefs. The restaurant was getting flooded with complaints of slow service, but Dick Boss never got punished because of his connections. At one point, the restaurant was running on 1/3 employees needed to run it. Five. This happened nearly 11 years ago. I was a young kid working my first job at a grocery store as a stock boy. The grocery store was one of the biggest grocery chains in the Netherlands, but it was in a small place. Common policy for this chain was to periodically switch their store managers throughout the region to uphold the standard across the chain. The managers would also get pointers as to what to focus on when taking over a new store. After working my job for just over a year, the time came for a new store manager. The new guy was former manager of one of the stores in the very center of the biggest city of the province. This meant he often had to deal with unpleasant customers, beggars, and junkies near the store, as well as a steady stream of easily replaceable employees that were often lazy, incompetent, or were exchange students that didn't speak Dutch. All in all, he prided himself on being capable of running his old store, and seemed unhappy having to leave the old place where he felt himself king and ruler. The first thing he said to all employees at the new store was that he would solve the high work absence that was noted to him by his predecessor and regional management, and that he would gladly fire the mostly 15 to 18-year-old employees that didn't show up enough for whatever reason, school included. Granted that some of my co-workers were ill quite often, especially during the music festival season, given that I was sick often and was reprimanded a few times before for being too slow at my job due to my meticulous following of the rules, which I was praised for at the same time. I knew there was going to be issues. Skip forward 3 months, and everyone hated the new manager. He looked down on everyone, had some obvious misogynistic vibes about him, and threatened firing me multiple times for being sick over 4 separate times since he started. I had a long shift that day, and after 3 hours was allowed my 30-minute break. I was hoping to phone my mom to pick me up since I felt ill. I had already felt a fever coming on for nearly an hour, was near crying from my eyes feeling hot and having a major headache. Having informed my supervisor that I might be having a bad reaction to my hepatitis A/B vaccine from the day before, I was planning on a vacation to Cuba in a few months. He asked me to finish the first 3 hours of my shift so the evening shift workers could take over for me when I was allowed to leave. But since the manager was in today, he didn't have the final say. During the start of the evening shift, I got multiple concerned questions from my co-workers, as by now I was very pale and had bloodshot eyes. As per usual, the shift's workload was discussed, this time, however, with the store manager present. As my break was technically during the first 25 minutes of the evening shift, I was allowed to remain in the break room to have dinner after everyone left to the storefront. But for some reason, the manager stayed as well. "I heard from the supervisor you're feeling ill again. You will finish your shift today, or I will personally fire you right now." "Sir, I feel seriously ill, and I might have a bad reaction to my vaccine. I feel like I might have a fever, and I don't feel capable of working another 2.5 to 3.5 hours. Take some aspirin, have your break, then get back to work." "Sir, I already had the maximum dosage 1 hour ago, and can't take any more for at least 4 hours. I want to go home, and you can't fire me for just being sick. Take your break, eat your food, drink some water, and I best be seeing you up front in 20 minutes. He then left the break room. Not knowing what to do, I lay my head on the cold desk room table. I start full on crying, hot painful tears. 25 minutes pass by, and not knowing how to handle myself, I decide to fake having fainted as the manager walks back into the break room. "What drama, what an act! That's it, you're done here." I do not react. After 2 minutes of boasting, he's seen this all before. The manager wakes me, still insisting I'm faking being ill. "Sir, I just blacked out and I feel very ill. I would like to call home and be picked up." "Fine if you insist, but I'm calling the ER. And your parent is going to take you there as soon as they're here to pick you up." A smug grin on his face, obviously trying to pressure me into confessing I'm faking it. "Whatever you want, sir, as long as I can go home without getting fired for being ill." Later that evening, I was diagnosed with severe side effects from the vaccine, combined with the rampant and more severe than normal Mexican flu, resulting in a 39.5°C fever. I stayed at home sick for a week and did not go to work for 2.5 weeks. Got all shifts I was planned for during that time paid, even though sick leave was normally unpaid. And I got a formal apology from the manager upon my return, although he kept being a pain for all my co-workers. He never dared speak a word to me again unless it was praised for my excellent customer service and perfect-looking aisles. I heard years later that within his first year, the manager was fired by regional management for his conduct in trying to lessen work absence and his negativity towards the mostly female register staff. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream, episode 75. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like, comment, and subscribe. Not all at the same time. I mean, obviously if you've already subscribed and you hit the subscribe button, then that would unsubscribe you, and I don't want that. So if you're already subscribed, leave the subscribe button alone. But maybe hit the like button. Right? If you're on a touch screen, you could probably poke it with your nose. That might work. We'll try poking it with our noses today. Wipe the screen first if your hands have been... But yeah, all those good things. Engagement helps the video. It makes YouTube go, oh, people like that video. We should tell more people about it. Yes. Okay, glad I'm done recording because it is currently 6:22 p.m. and the children are screaming nearby. They sound like they're having fun, but, well, who can tell with kids? They generally just make noise and mess. I've already got a headache. Take some painkillers in a bit, I think. Anyway, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.